Welcome to We Took the Quest, a podcast about tabletop role-playing games and our experiences with them. I'm your co-quest master, Charles Woody.
And I'm your co-quest master, Stephen Pinella.
And today we have a Dungeon Crawl Classic Sidequest episode. Stephen, what are we going to be talking about today?
Today we're talking about The Baron Sport by Alfred Valley, Creep Skrag Creep by Goodman Games, and The Gang Lords of Lankhmar by Harley Stroh.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy this next 90-minute episode covering all these delicious modules.
Let's go.
Today we'll be covering The Baron Sport by Alfred Valley, a character funnel module that can be played with the game Dungeon Crawl Classics.
And what a classic this one is going to be. Definitely a very traditional feeling dungeon crawl.
100% the dungeon vibes are felt on both the player side and the GM side. Stephen, for the game Dungeon Crawl Classics, do you think they thought about calling it Dungeon Sprint Flops?
I don't think so, actually, in the slightest now, Charles, that I think about it. Considering everything that happens, definitely not. No, I don't think so.
Okay, great. Was just curious if they threw that name around. So The Baron Sport is by Alfred Valley. Alfred Valley has a YouTube channel that they do summaries of tabletop role-playing games. Has a big like Adult Swim vibes. So they have a really popular one called Mothership RPG One Rule. And they recently did one for Dungeon Crawl Classics with Shut Up and Sit Down. And that's what caught my interest in playing Dungeon Crawl Classics and running The Baron Sport by Alfred Valley. They talk about the different modules that you can run. And then one of them, they say like, oh, you can also use mine, just came out The Baron Sport.
Is it more of like a channel to elevator pitch TTRPGs? Is that the use for it? Or
so the description of Alfred Valley's YouTube channel is tabletop games and synthesizers. So you're going to get a mixture of content on there. They also have an itch store, an itch.io store that has other things that they've made. They've made I believe a solo Mothership module that you can run, as well as a couple trifolds. We'll make sure we link that in the description. But yeah, Alfred Valley, designer, YouTuber, doing a little bit of everything. And I guess someone who's really into synthesizers as well.
Hey, it's a very solid vibe. Did the video catch your eye and you're like, oh, I want to run not only this TTRPG, but this particular module?
100%. 100%. When I saw that video, I was like, I have to try this out. This is the first time in a long time that I wanted to play like fantasy again, like old school fantasy.
Yeah, and very old school vibes, and in a good way, I think. It was really an interesting experience.
Yes, this isn't like a Critical Role run through or even like a Dimension 20. This is very more like probably the games, maybe the Stranger Things kids were playing. So let's talk about the overview of the module. On the module itself, there is a section called What is this? And I'm going to read a few sentences from that to let you know, okay, what is the Baron Sport about? The Baron Sport is a 0-level funnel adventure for Dungeon Crawl Classics. This is a good old-fashioned gauntlet. The players' unlucky characters have been ceremoniously arrested by the Baron's lackeys and imprisoned in his castle. Soon, they will be released from their cells, not only to be faced with a series of weird and devious challenges. This adventure is designed for roughly 20 0-level characters, and players are expected to start playing with 5 characters each. Essentially, the Baron has taken your characters, thrown them in this keep, and will be watching them from sport.
The funny thing about it, the reason that your character was arrested is not consequential, but at the same time, the most consequential. It helps with not only character building, but in terms of what you do, it kind of governs and helps that out as well with what you want to do.
100%. Yes. So when you get your players to the table, one thing that they note in the module, it's a D100 table on what are the reasons or what is the reason that your character was arrested for the Baron. You roll it. And then if your character does something tied to the reason that you were arrested, you get a bonus for it mechanically.
And you'll often be stretching the reasoning to make it so that you can get that extra little bump. Some of them are very straightforward, like, oh, I can apply this to this role. Or some of them are just fully outlandish and good luck.
Yes, I think my favorite one is we played I was running the game. Steven was a player. My son Jude played with us. Our friend Cody and Tyler joined us as well. And one of my son's character's reasons for being arrested was for impersonating a donkey.
Yeah, that was surprisingly came up and was used. There's another one. Oh, another one of my favorites is being misleading to a tourist. It's just there's some wild ones, and we were able to have 5 different ones for each of our characters.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil all of them, but I did look at some more of them. Some of them are pretty silly. One is for leaving a huge stink in the privy.
Another good one for their shit-eating grin. I mean, it's just so silly.
And one last one is for walking on the Baron's lawn.
I hate when I do that. Wrong place, wrong time.
You've been captured. You're in the Baron's Keep. The way that this dungeon is designed is everyone's going to be separated in 5 different rooms. So you will have 1 character out of your 5 in each individual room. The gate will go up, and then you will go through an experience. Before we get super into it, if you don't know what a funnel is, you can go back and listen to our deep dive episode for Dungeon Crawl Classics. But a quick summary is a character funnel for Dungeon Crawl Classics is you're going to start with a group of characters, and by the end of this adventure, you're only going to have maybe 1, maybe 2 that will survive.
If you're lucky, 3.
If you're lucky, like my son, you'll have 3. It is, yeah. It's like I think funnel is a very polite term. It's literally a meat grinder. I think it's a better term.
Definitely more of a meat grinder, where every little decision is crucial, and your character most likely will die, as we have discussed. In terms of the player's side of it, you just kind of don't know what you're getting into. You are told to make these 5 characters, roll up the reasons they're arrested, and then just tossed into these insane scenarios where you are given a full description of the room, what's going on, and then a door on the other side. Sometimes it's open, sometimes it's fully closed. And you just sort of have to figure out how to get across. Sometimes it is as easy as just walking through the door. But curiosity will always grip you.
Curiosity always getting the attention of the cat.
Yep.
I think we've done a really good job of doing a non-spoilery overview. I think we're ready to deep dive in. Steven, is there anything else you think you want to talk about that doesn't reveal too much?
Yeah. In terms of non-spoilers, the art really cool from a GM side. There's a lot that you can show your players, and that's what Woody did for us. That won't spoil too much, helps them picture, because there is an aspect of just throwing the words and description at your players, but there are also, with each room, a good like diagram or picture to show along to help kind of visualize a lot of what's going on. Sometimes it just won't help, but that's also the fun of it. The art definitely leaves enough room to have the players imagine it for themselves. In terms of the layout of this module, very straightforward. It is very one thing leading to another. In one of the pages, there's a map that you can show the players. It says that you can show the players the map. It just doesn't make sense, and that's by design. A very funny, like, here's what's going on underneath the Baron's mansion, and it won't help them understand anything. And I think the more vague it is for the players, at first frustrating, but then like that's the point, because of course you've been probably wrongfully arrested and you're trying to get out by any means necessary.
This is definitely a big theater of the mind adventure. You're not really going to get, this is a 30-foot by 30-foot room, things like that, or specific placements. You will get like little call outs in each individual room. I love the art overall. I'm re-falling in love with like just this old school fantasy. I think some people call it pulp fantasy. I'm not 100% sure what pulp fantasy is, but it's just got that very old school, like late 70s, early 80s vibe. And I want to say how grateful I am for the images that are in this book. I will say maybe like 8 out of 10 times, I think everyone's able to like pick up what the author is putting down just like from reading the description. But for the very last room, that the photo came in clutch for us.
Definitely. That was definitely needed. Because, like I said, there's just a wall of like, here's what's going on. And for those who get overstimulated easily, you could get fully distracted. But that picture really did help.
Absolutely. So art is great. I looked for art credit designs. I believe the art is by Alfred Valley. I didn't see any other design notes that are in here.
Oh, really?
So they wrote this bad boy. They designed it. Maybe they edited themselves as well. I didn't see any edit credits, and they did the art. So this is a full one-person show here.
Oh, yeah, very, very well done. Very well put together.
And since we're talking about the art, we might as well talk about the layout before we get into the real meat and potatoes of the review. Layout is great. I think it reads very clearly. The only problem that I struggled with the map on page 8. I decided not to show y'all. I had a hard time like seeing how the rooms funnel to one another.
Well, that was what I was referring to. I think it's a map that you can just show the players as sort of a red herring. Like it was supposed to work like that map is character knowledge from what I understood. And the character knowledge is very little and it doesn't make sense. And that's the point, you know? So I think it was just a little teehee kind of, this is what your characters know. They know nothing. They don't know how to get out of here. They don't understand how this place works.
I love imagining the design process, and there's like, let's throw in a little teehee here just to really get them confused.
Get them fully confused, and that there is no hope to actually get out of here.
The dangers of the teehee. Other than that, it was really good. Great art, great layout. I think it's 100% time to get in the real meat and potatoes of the review. So once again, this is a spoiler warning. If you want to go through this with fresh eyes and fresh ears, I highly recommend you stop. If you're going to be a game master and you're looking for some tips, feel free to stay. And we will get into this now. So, Steven, tell me about your experience. This is your first Dungeon Crawl Classics game, and this was your first ever character funnel experience.
Yeah, it was very straightforward. There was no tedious character building. We love a good D100 table. Random tables are DM's best friend. In that reason you were arrested table, great. Very solid design. And for role-playing purposes, trying to fit in the reason you were arrested into the role, really cool. Very like sort of mental gymnastics way of getting through this crazy situation we find out our characters in.
Did you have a favorite room?
A favorite room would definitely have to be the marionette falling down slowly. So the idea of the room was we walk in, there's cushions on the floor, and there is a marionette, a human-sized marionette, being lowered from the ceiling with a makeshift bomb in their hand, and it's just lowering with an open door on the other side. So it seems simple, just run across the room. But of course, it's not that simple. And there is a point that this module makes, and it's simple, and it breaks it down for the GM. There is stuff that the players know and see. There is stuff that's just underneath the surface, and stuff they fully don't know until interacted with. So there was many things with this room in terms of all three of those things. Because you try and take one step in, the cushions are filled with rocks, and there's just rocks, and it's not actually pillows, and you're just like, what is going on? And you really don't know how quickly this marionette is falling down. So it's very interesting to sort of like have someone throw an object into a minefield just to see what will happen. That was usually a majority of the way we approached each room, but the marionette one was a very fun experience.
So if you're looking at the PDF, that's going to be room 1-2. And as Steven says, for the GMs out there, the way that Alfred has this set up for you for each room, the description is, open information for the open eye, information just under the surface, easily discovered for the semi-closed eyes, and then, the completely closed eyes, hidden information. I did make one tweak to room 1-2. So the marionette doesn't fall down in room 1-2, but I wanted to just put pressure on like time. So not only did you have like the fuse going off, but I was like, also you're going to get squished like by the ceiling. That's something that I added in myself.
Oh yeah. I noticed that. Yeah, the cool thing about each of these rooms is it's well thought out, and there's enough room to tweak things here and there to either light a fire under your players to kind of make decision making a little quicker. Different things like that. It invites a loosey goosiness that can be also molded and shifted for how you want to run each encounter.
I will say my favorite room is room 1-3. So it's a dance hall with black and white checkerboard tiles. And the tiles have the letter A on them for the white tiles and letter B for the black tiles. And the pressure plates, you step on an A tile, a shower of ants comes down. And then if you press on a B tile, a swarm of bees comes out. And there are ropes hanging from the ceiling. So it's like this very, what was that? Ultimate Ninja Warrior meets dungeon torture setup.
Yeah, that was where my first character died. In that room. That was also the first room that we all really sat down and like, okay, let's get this figured out. Let's work together to make this very complicated yet straightforward way of just crossing this horrifying room.
And as you said, I really appreciate, especially if you're running this as a game master, all the rooms are pretty much that setup. Like you said earlier, you walk in, there's a door on the other end, and there is an obstacle in between you, and it sets up very easily with the 3 eyes, so you know to tell like what to tell the players and what to hold back. And there's just a really good amount of variety through all the rooms. I didn't think there was anything redundant. Something that I do want to speak about is I love, from a story standpoint, you really experience the funnel because it goes from 5 rooms to 4 rooms, to 3 rooms to 2 and then to 1, and you're seeing the characters perish as we get to each new row of rooms. We have less and less people, and it just really, from like a game design standpoint, it was like watching like a key go into a keyhole and turn. Like it was done so well,
right? Because it ramps up by design, even though as the game draws longer, it becomes shorter simply by design, which is it's great. We fit it in a 3-hour window. It was pretty seamless because character dies, move on to the next one. It just works.
I think it took us an hour to get through the first 5, and I was like, there are 4 more sets. I'm not trying to be here for 5 hours. And then after that, we were really on a roll. I was like watching like a snowball effect come into place. Another great design, like thematic thing that Alfred did a really good job of is that there are these little cutscenes at the end of each round. So you get a little bit of description of what's going on with the Baron, like the Baron watching you. I think really just help remind the players like, hey, we're being watched. This is some weird medieval Squid Game that you're participating in.
Yeah. And the players will not care about it. They're like, I don't care about this Baron's issues. He trapped me in a dungeon. They won't care at all. So there a way you could sort of take liberty with this if you're GMing this, make a big thing of like make a giant tone switch, make the players question, wait, should I care about this? Irrelevant. It's just the follies of what's happening in the Baron's life. The players shouldn't care, but the theatrics should be ramped up to 11, and I think it would land in a very funny way.
100%. Yeah, that's something that I really enjoyed. On the topic of the funnel, so there's a room that you all never went to because from room 1-1 to 1, there's a room filled with smog, essentially big dragon horde. All your characters died. There is a room 3-1, that has a lever that transports you all to the last level, which is pretty interesting. It takes you into the Obulette. So it's room 3-1. The Baron's Lesser Aviary, where he keeps his shittiest birds.
Oh, yes. I saw this room.
There's a dried up well in the middle of the room, caked along with the rest of the room with muck and feathers. There's a locked door on the opposite side of the room from where the characters enter. The birds, flying loose among various perches, are haggard and agitated. They have metal talons that will begin to swoop at the PCs shortly after they enter. At the bottom of the well, 10 feet down, is a lever that will unlock the exit. On pulling the lever, the bottom of the well will fall away, and anyone standing there will be conveyed directly into the Obulette. There's a golden feather amongst the detritus on the floor of the aviary. Possessing it causes a PC's luck modifier to gain +1. So the Obulette is literally like room 5-1, And I thought that was so funny that it connects it. And that was the one room you all didn't make it to.
Probably by design. Maybe they're like, if you happen to get through the room with a dragon, you are good enough to go to the end and try your luck at fully getting out.
Yeah, you deserve a really good reward. That's actually a really good point.
Yeah, I think that was pretty solid design. Of course, one of our, what are you going to do? What did Bilbo do in a room full of gold? He touched the gold and the gold fell in the Book of the Dragon. Of course, that's what we did. And what the dragon did was just fry us to death.
Y'all were incinerated. So I think that's really good. That shows some playability because this definitely could go down differently with like a different group, which I think is great. But once again, like you're seeing the inner workings of the funnel come to fruition.
Right. And the neat part about it is when you roll up the characters, you have your gear and your stats and your saves. And then it's all just a luck of the draw. Was the right person in the right place? Great. Were they not? No hope. Burned to death by a dragon is what would happen.
Sometimes it just be that way. Steven, exactly. Was there anything you didn't like about the Baron sport?
Honestly, no.
Wow. My regards.
Very, very solid one-shot adventure that checks all the boxes.
High praise from co-quest master Stephen Piniella. I also have no bad things to say. What I wanted to say is one of my new favorite things in TTRPGs in general is just a thing happening to a group and there's no way for like them to leave. I know that sounds like kind of railroady, but it's also just like you were all working together, kind of like a well-oiled machine, like a team. And it was just great to have everyone experience this thing at the same time where like you weren't separating with one another. And it really just drove that home. And that's like one of my new favorite things. There's like I was looking for more funnels to run for future DCC games.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them were like, there's two branches. It's either the characters go to the funnel or they start in the funnel. And I just really like the fact that we just started out of the gate. Like we're immediately on the racetrack we're going as opposed to like finding a way to turn y'all there.
Right, because who in their right mind would go through a funnel like this? Like, there's no reason for a sensible person to want to do this. So it's nice to have them just be like, all right, you're in. Sorry. And the reasons for being arrested issue is hilarious and perfect. Doesn't have to make sense, but you are here. Try and get out.
I agree. The last thing I wanted to touch on, and then we'll get to just talking about running it, I guess other running it notes from a GM experience. There are 3 notable NPCs. So the first being the Baron. He's kind of like the untouchable eye in the sky, watching you all be entertained. He has his right-hand man named Gerald. You do interact with Gerald a little bit. He's just like the deputy of the Baron. And then there's Wumberly, which is kind of the doofus stepson. He apparently is very lucky. He's almost like immortal. I didn't use a whole lot of Wumberly because we just had such great interactions between y'all's characters, but Wumberly did come clutch in the end for us, for our group. So there is a good amount of spider webs connecting the NPCs to y'all and the story.
Yeah, with Wumberly, the whole bit is he has plot armor. If he would die, he just doesn't. Much to the chagrin of the Baron. Wumberly is the stepson to the Baron. He just doesn't really care about. It's just, but that's just underlying narrative that's happening in the background. And Wumberly like wants to hang out with air quote new friends, and is just sort of a bumbling character that I didn't realize in the first room he was one of the statues. He was pretending to be a statue. So it's a very, very comical character that I think the way we did it was very solid. Like you said, the chemistry between the characters was good enough. But if you want to have this bumbling character just hang out to kind of pester the PCs and then later find out that's the Baron's kid, it could be a very funny reveal or aggravating reveal. Probably would have ended the same way ours ended, if I'm being fully honest.
Yeah, Wimberly fell to his death. Unfortunately, he was held hostage. I think the Baron will be fine.
I think the Baron will also be fine, honestly.
Absolutely. So that's pretty much it from a player standpoint. I know I've been given some experience from the Game Master's view as well, but to summarize, this was my first ever Dungeon Crawl Classics game. This is my first ever character funnel game. This made my life so easy. Like, I normally stand when I GM, and the way that this was set up, I actually got to sit down and just present what's happening to y'all. You know, I put the carrot out, y'all will go dangle it. I move the stick around, reveal a little bit more what's holding on to the carrot, and it just runs super smooth, and it's super easy to follow from a layout standpoint. And the PDF, I would highly recommend if you are running Dungeon Crawl Classics and you need a really good character funnel or just like a really good module to start for your first time, I would recommend this.
The way I look at this module is it's not an end piece of a puzzle. It's like a middle piece. It's just something you can plug in to a story that you already have. If you're looking at a longer campaign, it fits in very well. And as a GM, one of my wishes for scenarios to happen is presenting something to the players and they run with it for 30 to 45 minutes so I can sit there and watch what happens. It's always my goal to get the players to interact with the thing I presented with them. And this module definitely allows that. All you have to do is peer at your notes, make sure of a description, look back, and have the players figure it out themselves. This module rewards creative thinking. It tells, I'm pretty sure it says it in the module to like, we celebrate that here. If the PCs figure out a crazy way to solve the puzzle and it makes sense, give it to them. Like, this is, they're trying to get out.
Yeah, 100%. And y'all came up with some really creative ways. And what was nice, so I think overall, like 15, so you went through 14 rooms. And there were some rooms where, like you said, like y'all just easily got across. And I at least to me, what I noticed, it still felt really good when y'all were like, oh, we got through this so easy. Like, this was nice. It was still enjoyable for y'all just as much as the ones like, oh, this was tough. Like, this is hard.
And I saw towards the end, even of the module, there's like a 1d10 table of extra rooms. If you need extra rooms or want to swap rooms, there's enough little jumping off point that you can fully take it into your own hands. Like, if you see something that may not vibe with your group, you can swap something in, swap something out. It's just very, very plug and play. And I think it's not only a good time for the GM, but the players will eat this up. And there's many different ways to go about these puzzles. And that's the beauty of it.
Something you said earlier that I do want to come back to, you said that this was like a good middle piece, like of a puzzle. You could absolutely use this for a campaign that's ongoing as something that happens to the group. Like, for me personally, if we do play with this group again, like, I already got like an evil guy that's important to y'all now. Like, the Baron, like, dude, no, I'm not a fan of that guy. He tortured me.
Right. There's motive in it, and it helps build that for future campaigns, or now you have a backstory, and it's very neat. And this is a very solid backstory module for a character that you're designing for a DCC game or any game.
Nothing bonds stronger than trauma.
I hear people say that all the time.
So overall, we've gone through what we've, the player experience, the GM experience, the art layout, the overview. I think the main thing to ask ourselves now is this something we recommend running and playing? What do you think, Stephen?
I believe that this is a resounding bring it to the table.
I second that. Bring it to the table either way. If you are scared to run a game for the first time, I think this is a great springboard to this be your first Game Master experience. It's really hard to mess this up. You are set up for success. And then from a player standpoint, gosh, just so fun. Like, you have these 5 characters. How are they going to interact with the other, 15 characters? And how are you going to get through this moving puzzle? It's, running or playing. Highly recommend it. Bring it to the table as well. Well, that'll do it for this side quest. I have been your co-quest master, Charles Woody.
And I have been your co-quest master, Stephen Pinella.
And may your dungeon crawls be fast and always a classic.
Very slick and slippery.
Until next time. Today we're going to be talking about the Dungeon Crawl Classics module, Creep, Skrag, Creep. And this was written by Stephen Newton, and cover art was done by Stefan Pogue. This was released in October 2019 and published by Goodman Games. In this adventure, this is a character funnel module. The ship is adrift and a crew is dead. When the passengers of the Star of Nostra awaken, drugged and bound, and discover the crew is missing, a desperate race for survival begins. The vessel was meant to transport your group of humble villagers to a brighter future. It is now a coffin ship filled with mysterious deaths, dark plots, and a stalking horror that will not stop until it has feasted on every last soul.
I just wanted to go to the mines, man. I just wanted to provide for my family, and we did not get to do that.
I hate when I'm trying to get a gig at the copper mines and a beastie is murdering me on the ship, transporting me to the copper mines.
It happens more often than you think, really.
So it is a survival horror module on a ship, character funnel. We both have the PDF here. Overall, I really dig the art. Honestly, when I'm looking at the cover page compared to the second page, the cover page is like full in color. You see two adventurers and you see the Skrag behind them kind of peeking through. But on the next page, there's like this really gnarly black and white photo of like the fully developed Skrag, I guess. And I really wish they maybe used that as the cover because it looks so cool.
Yeah, the cover looks a little silly, kind of like whodunit. But the next one, it's like a horror. Very akin to like a Dracula. The entire vibe of Creep, Skrag, Creep is like the last voyage of the Demeter. Characters on a ship, there's something trying to kill them. They hardly see the thing they're trying to kill them until it's too late. And that's the vibe that picture on the second page gives. It's kind of like Dracula, like trying to like kill you.
The most terrifying moment in all the Dracula films is when Dracula goes, eh.
It happens right before each person gets killed.
Well, that's good to hear. The Last Voyage of the Demeter is Steven's favorite movie of all time. So I'm sure it was a great experience for you to go through that module through a TTRPG perspective.
Let the record show it's not my favorite movie of all time. It is very fine. It's a story that's been told multiple times. And this one definitely captures that. Honestly, this module, probably better than the movie.
Whoa! Clip it right there, fam. Controversial statement. TTRPG module Creep, Skrag, Creep is more entertaining than The Last Voyage of the Demeter. So we like the art. What else? Are there any other cooler ones? There are some more cool black and white photos. There's one on page 3 that shows, once again, the kind of like a younger Skrag grabbing an adventurer by the throat. Looks friggin' gnarly. The map. I think the map has one of the probably has the second sickest drawing of the Skrag itself. So that's page 9 on the PDF. You see like a giant Skrag up above. And then you also have the little baby Skrags coming out of the eggs. And then you have like the adolescent one in the bottom left corner.
I kind of wish, in terms of the PDFs, it might just be the design of the entire module. I kind of wish that there were more isolated pictures for some that you could just clip and then send for visuals. There's no one picture that has just what you need, like just the visual.
Yeah, 100%. And that's something I also had for pieces of feedback as well. Yeah, without getting too spoilery, there really isn't a lot of imagery of like how the ship looks outside of a couple like action, like fluff shots. It is very, very text heavy. And when I was reading it and prepping it, when it shows you like the room name, I would look at like read the room name description, and then I would go back like to page 9 or whatever to like kind of get a visual where it's at. Like I found myself getting lost visually when I was reading like the room descriptions or like the room names. They do have some descriptive text in there, but maybe for one or like every other one, they could have had like a more in-depth photo just to get some more immersion bought in. Granted, it's a TTRPG, so maybe we just need to work on our theater of the mind a little bit, but a little extra help, a little extra boost, little photo never hurt nobody.
Maybe it would have been a little more helpful to like draw out each area or have the players draw out the maps as we go along. It was just difficult to like go back and based off of looking at the map and then the descriptions, it's very back and forth, and maybe the theater of the mind needed a little extra help.
Yeah, need a little boost. That's actually a really good idea. And like having the players draw the map does have that old school feel. And it would have made my life so much easier because then you could quickly reference, go back, and everyone is building that same image of the ship as you're playing along. Oh, missed opportunity on my hand. But now I know for the future if I run into another situation like this. As far as reading it and like layout, pretty straightforward. I wasn't getting lost in here, which is good. So like there is an appendix that does remind you like who are the important people, what are the important places to remember. So that is good there. But yeah, I think tying it back to, I will say before we get into the meat and the potatoes, the deep dive, if you were, there was a YouTuber who covered Creep Skrag Creep, and I'm going to look up their name right now. And his biggest critique was like even the map itself. So the YouTube page is called One Shot Adventures. So it's the number one shot together adventures. It's kind of hard to read when you're looking at the map or just like kind of see placing players throughout like where they're going to be, like in L1 or C1, B1. So I feel that kind of ties into our critiques as well. Maybe just had a hard time like having people visualize where they are on the ship.
Even down to the structure of the module in terms of it's pretty wordy. It's pretty meaty compared to Baron's game. Baron's game got just the description of the room, and there you go. This one has like a very thick description, which isn't bad. There's just a lot going on. And if you look at like page 7, your eyes almost gloss because there's just 2 giant walls of text that you have to get through. Definitely some prep on the DM side in terms of, maybe take a highlighter if you have it printed out and highlight the stuff that's important. There seems to be a lot of fluff trying to find what's important for the players, and the game is definitely, it needs to be predetermined.
Steven, I hear your point, and I agree with it. So the module that you're referencing to is the Baron Sport by Alfred Valley. I feel like that just set the bar so high for us, funnel-wise. I will say when I was trying to figure out this is the second funnel me and Steve have ever played. When deciding like what funnel will be the next one that I wanted to do, I wanted one that could be done like within a one shot. There is one that is like heralded as like the funnel for DCC. It's called Sailors of the Starless Sea. That's like the funnel one. But everyone I read it was like, this will take between like 3 to 8 hours. And I was like, I want to get through this funnel pretty quickly. So I did research. I wanted to find one that didn't have like a whole lot of coverage on it. But I guess I can see why a lot of people aren't talking about Creep Skrag Creep as much. It was still fun. There was a Reddit thread where I would say like 3 to 4 comments on like a 20 comment thread said like, hey, I had a blast running Creep Skrag Creep. And I think some of the modifications I may have made may have hindered the experience as well. And I think that goes to show, and I think this is something I can talk about more, or we can talk about more at the beginning. When we're like reviewing a module, the way that someone runs it can affect the perception of it. I think overall, when you're reading it, though, you can still see the foundation that the author or the game designer put together, but it can slightly change based off of the group you're running this with and the game master and dungeon master that's running it.
Usually at the top of these modules, they say a blurb or they say a description of why this should be run in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Even with that, it's kind of like the idea of hear the rules, make sure you understand them, and if you would like to break them, understand what that'll do in a way.
Yeah.
But usually every module I've seen so far will explain roughly, run it this way for this result. I saw that it said, during testing, this had a TPK, a total party kill. Everyone died. And there's little tips throughout the book of how to lessen the difficulty or make it less detrimental to the players, which is also neat.
Yeah, exactly. So to summarize, it does give you a foundation like, hey, you can run it X amount of ways. Or if you want to change it up, feel free to do that as well. And that's something that I did. So we talked about the art, we talked about the layout. Are we ready to get into the meat and potatoes of this?
Yeah. Let me eat those potatoes and meats.
One serving of potatoes and meats, please, sir. Steven, the player experience, how was it playing through this module?
It was one of those classic wake up in a prison and all your stuff is gone. Good luck, get out. It's a very tropey sort of adventure type that I've even played in Dungeons & Dragons multiple times. It can be frustrating, but also once you get past that frustration of that, then you get in the mode of like, all right, now how do I get out of this? How do I escape with what I got? What do I have in this room? Very, very escape room vibes. And then, as I said prior, the last voyage of the Demeter, there's something aboard, and now we got to try and not die and escape at the same time.
I'm curious if anyone's listening to this is like pounding the table for X movie that also is a monster on a ship that maybe is way better than the last voyage of the Demeter. Granted, Alien, right? Alien is the one I think that goes to. So there are some Alien references in this book. The name of the pirate ship is Nostro in the book, almost like Nostromo. I changed it because I didn't want everyone to immediately think that it was kind of like an Alien rip. I don't think it really stopped that from people putting two and two together.
Yeah, I mean, it still did the Alien things for sure. Also, maybe the Thing, kind of same vibe. People stuck in one location trying to escape but not die. Tons of I'm stuck in X location and this monster's trying to kill us and we don't have anything to contact the outside world.
Yeah, very similar. Yeah, I could throw in the Thing there as well. I remember you telling me a story like back in the day you played a D&D session with your family, like where you were all captured and your things were taken from you. I'm sure that was like a long time ago. Did it feel just like the same experience, or do you remember that adventure with more like fond memories? How do they compare between the other? Has it been too long to really think about?
It basically is not as scary because maybe the chest with our stuff was closer by, or we had to get through a fight and then the guy had the keys on him after we defeated him, and then we get our stuff back immediately, and then it's like now we break out with all of our stuff. So it compares pretty well, kind of same vibes, but there's not necessarily a monster that's hunting us.
Once you get that equipment again, you're feeling pretty powerful. There was a moment when we were running this, everyone was like, all right, who's going to open the door and die? Because it's a funnel. It's so deadly, like one strike, you die type deal. Do you enjoy that part like of the funnel, or does that come back to like, oh no, I named the cattle, I'm scared?
Once we found out like, okay, every door is death, then it was just trying to figure out ways to avoid that. Like if there weren't livestock on the ship, the whole party would have been dead because we started using them to open up the doors.
Yeah, so in the module, when it says like controlling the monster, it recommends to have it attack like one every like 3 actions. So like when y'all do 3 things, like on the third thing that you do, like the monster will attack. Every time you open the door, that was like the third thing that y'all had like done or tried to do. So I feel that there. You talked about how this module was frustrating at times. What were some specific things that were frustrating?
The biggest thing was the issue with the portcullis.
Yes. Let me preface this before Steven goes in further. I loved the Baron sport. so much. And what I thought was genius about the Baron sport is it separated the groups of characters into each room. So you all had 4 characters each, and one of those 4 characters would be in room 1, another one room 2, 3, and 4. So in my genius plot, I'm like, what if I put a gate in the middle of the ship? Y'all have a group of players on the left and on the right. And in some places it's sung, in some places like it added like an amount of pressure, like, oh, we can't get through this gate, we're kind of trapped here, that's bad. But then on the other hands, there were a few moments if someone had like a dead character on the left side or a dead character on the right side, they were immediately taken out and I was just dying inside.
Because they were just sitting there.
Yes.
I think it could have worked without it, because then it would have promoted more, oh, we have numbers, let's just send this person through. Or, I think we could have gotten through doors a lot quicker if we were all together.
Yes. And I caveat that with, but then when you're separated and you have smaller numbers, the decisions are bigger, the stakes are higher. So I enjoyed that much because I do enjoy, and I hate to say it, like when someone like is upset about losing character, because then I know like they cared, like they were bought in type deal. But then if you are this mass group of 15 people, you're just like, oh, send Stinky Diddly Bottom, the goblin that no one cares about, through. That feels weightless to me. But I understand your side completely.
Right, because at the end of the day, we understand that only you need someone to survive to continue the adventure. So there's obviously going to be a favorite and a not favorite. And what's funnier than sending the not favorites through to accidentally live, and then the second the favorite goes through, they die? I think that's a little more like, you thought you knew, but surprise, the guy you liked actually died.
Yeah. I hear that, and I accept that criticism wholly, and I will take it with me to the day I die. I'll be on my deathbed. Why did I put that gate on that damn ship? What's the most memorable moment from the module that was ran?
Probably the final fight where the monsters all on one side and they're like just running through us, and then the pirates are coming aboard on the other side, and despite looking grim, there was a point where we prayed to the water kobold god and they interfered with the fight. Really the final fight is like pretty epic. There's a lot of potential for cinematic scenes.
Awesome. Yes. And to get more into like the spoiler zone now, in addition to worrying about the monster, there is a very quiet presence of pirates. Like you read the ledgers or the notes from the deceased captain or the first mate, and they talk about how they're worried about alerting the pirates that are on the sea. So having them kind of latch on to the ship and having that big fight with the monster at the end was kind of like a nice crescendo of the chaos all coming together. Good. I'm glad that was enjoyable. Any other like player experience things you want to talk about?
Yeah, I don't know if this is true for every funnel or the background narrative. It needs to somehow tie into the players. There's an extensive narrative that has been happening the last 2 modules that we've ran, that we're fighting for our lives. We could care less about the people who are trying to kill us. I don't know. It's just a weird thing where it's almost written off because we have bigger things to worry about than the plight of our captors / people who are trying to kill us.
Yeah, I hear that. And I think that ties into, so in the module, there is like a decently thick background that can be read. So there is the ship, Star Nostro. It comes to the island of Alviz every couple of weeks, and it has the promise of working the copper mines of Lys. There's such a popular kind of bus or ferry that they develop a lottery for you to get there, and getting on the ship is a big deal. So they give you that kind of like plot point. But yeah, I guess it's not super bought into the characters because they're DCC. you're not like Dungeons and Dragons characters. You're not like little heroes at the beginning. Like you're peasants. You probably will never go further than 5 miles away from your house. So there's like maybe not like a lot of RP in it, but I don't think you want to have a ton of RP for a funnel, because then in addition to naming the cattle, like this cattle's whole like life story and everything that they've gone through. And if they die like super early, I feel like that would be super unsatisfying.
I disagree. I think the character buy-in and then losing them will have that effect tenfold. I think if you run this, you play out that lottery scene where everyone's crowded around the town square and names are called out, and it's the 3 characters per person, for example, that we did. And they all line up and maybe play out that scene to have everyone excited about this lottery. Because we were going in, we're all like comparing notes in terms of like, oh, I have a hen for my thing. I have a falcon. But then it's all like the game starts and all that's gone, and now you're prisoners on a boat. And we're told, you win the lottery, now you're a prisoner on the boat. And it's like, oh, all right.
I did say you had a beautiful night partying with the ship's captain and the crew.
But we didn't even play that out,
No, we didn't. And because it was just like a crunch for time, if I knew I was going to 2-part of this, I definitely would have had some more like RP moments. But I think with how many rooms that there were, and we still didn't even get through all the rooms on the ship, and we played like 3.5 hours. That's why it was cut for time. But yeah, I agree. Definitely something worth trying out and totally valid. Nothing wrong with having a little more character buy-in. But I think the spirit of DCC, or at least based off like what I've been reading so far, it's more the action that's happening like to the characters, the randomness, like the chaos type deal.
Yeah, and maybe it's just a critique on DCC as a whole. It's less about the characters, it feels like. It's more about trying to get them to die as quick as possible. And I know it's a game where the characters are squishy on purpose, so it toes the line of like, do I really care about this person, or do I just want to get them through the meat grinder?
I don't think it's trying to have people die on purpose. I think it's just to reinforce how scary and dangerous these situations are for peasants that aren't magical or don't have any like military training.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely shows that, because you have 1 to 5 health points, and everything that does damage does 1 to 10 damage. So
I've never felt so powerful with the D4. So that's the player experience. The game master experience. So we already talked about my guffaw about adding the portcullis in the middle, the gate in the middle. We talked about the struggles of the room layout and just kind of how text heavy this is. I think overall, I read the module 3 times before I ran it. It is pretty easy. It does set you up for success. There's a lot of different ways that it can go, which is good. I think the biggest things for me that I wish I could have done differently was put more of an emphasis on this demon god Alcaraz. It's all work that the crew of the Nostra is doing. They're taking people as cattle to be thrown into sacrificial rituals on lists to the god of Alcaraz. One of their ceremonies went wrong. The pirates get infected. They get back on the ship. They start turning into the Skrags. The Skrags eat everyone alive. I just wish I could have tied that in a little bit more. And other than that, I don't really have like a whole lot of notes from a game master perspective. Like it was easy to run. We finished it. That was like my biggest thing. I was worried like, are we going to have to like 2-part of this? But felt semi-organic the way that things ended. So I just think what someone can do to make this better, add some more room photos that we talked about earlier, maybe trim some fat. When I was reading like the captain's log has like 12 entries. And when I was reading them, I was like, this seems super excessive. Like maybe trim this down to like 4 or 3. But then when you read the first mate's log, his is like 3 or 4. And I was like, I should do the same thing for the captain. Like just have like a different perspective.
Even though it's just a funnel, it probably takes a decent amount of prep in terms of like what's really important. Like with those logs, maybe try to find the important stuff that would have been relevant, just to trim it down, because it was like 9 entries?
12.
Yeah. So if you see like important name, have that be a thing. Anything that may be relevant to the story / puzzle that's going on. Definitely a lot to be trimmed. Alternatively, maybe this funnel is a 2-session kind of game where you could take your time with the top half of the ship and the bottom half of the ship, take time to create that buy-in. It feels meaty to the point of 2-session territory.
Yeah. It's like buying a double hamburger by itself, no fries. And like you're full, but maybe there's room for more. Like if you want a little more, like, oh man, I should have got like a set of fries instead type deal. I completely agree. I definitely think you could two-part of this. You can have a little bit more breathing room by setting up like some RP of winning the lottery. Absolutely. And then you go through like half the experience on the ship, and then you finish the full experience of the ship on the second session.
Right.
I agree. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
We only did the top 2 levels, mainly because we probably figured out that going down was not the correct thing. But there's a whole maybe like 4 or 5 pages that we missed out on that is not conducive of a 1-session kind of thing if you want to finish it all in 1 session, because it's a big boat. There's a lot going on, and it feels like we barely scratched the surface.
Yeah, now that you said that, I'm like looking at the map, like, wow, you really only did have to climb a ladder one time.
Right. And I thought there was just 1 level below us, but there was 2 below us where we started.
So yeah, learned a lot, understood. So I think the question is, do we recommend running this for your group? Steven.
Yeah, I think definitely run this. I think it's not a quick pickup and run if you take the time to prep for it and read into it and see what players can take. I think this is a banger.
Yeah, I think it's the same. It's kind of like I recommend it with like a little asterisk. Maybe have more of a conversation with your players beforehand. I think for us, while we're trying to establish our rhythm as TTRPG reviewers, I'm kind of like, well, let's get it done quicker. So then, like we'll have the experience under our belts type deal. But yeah, with some extra prep, maybe a little bit more RPG experience is good to go. If I had to tell you to choose between this or the Baron Sport, I would tell you to run the Baron Sport personally. But from a narrative perspective, this is much more meaty, and there's a lot more that can be explored compared to the Baron Sport.
There's a lot that you can connect to this, to a longer campaign. The same with the Baron Sport, technically. But the Baron Sport is very pick up and go. In terms of a funnel, if everyone understands that we're trying to get at least 1 character to survive, Baron Sport's the way. But the Skrag creep adventure is going to set up a more dire / bigger trauma, I think. So it all depends on the campaign you kind of want to run if you want to take a longer route with the DCC.
Agreed. And also, Skrag Creep is a part of Dungeon Crawl Classics Horror. They have like horror specific modules. So I'm sure there is a level 1 module that you can use that follows or maybe is closer to the events that happen on Skrag Creep. Well, that will do it here for us for this side quest. So once again, highly recommend you check out the YouTube video Dungeon Crawl Classics Skrag Creep review by One Shot Adventures. There's some more information there that covers it. Yeah, I think the best way to pass the test is to take the quest.
Agreed.
And we'll catch you next time.
Stay creepy, you Skrags.
Today, we're taking another side quest into Gang Lords of Lankhmar. This was written by Harley Stroh, with the cover art by Doug Kovacs, with additional art by Chris Arneson, Brad McDevitt, and Cliff Kurowski. I'm so sorry, Cliff. If you're listening to this, feel free to send me an email cussing me out on the pronunciation of your last name. And this was edited by Jen Brinkman. Let us give you a quick overview about the gang lords of Lankhmar. Lankhmar's slums are home to an interminable number of gangs whose fortunes rise and fall as surely as the tides of the inner sea. Each vies against the others, pitting beggar against bravo, slayer against thug, and ganglord against ganglord. And as one gang falls beneath a storm of intrigue, blades, and slingstones, inevitably another rises to take its place. If ever a gang is to break free of this quick cycle of death and rebirth, they must first triumph over their neighborhood rivals. So Lankhmar is a city from a very popular book series that I cannot remember, that I'm definitely not Googling right now. Yeah, it's a fictional city from Fafrid and the Grey Mouser by Fritz Leiber. So it's essentially, it's kind of like, it's its own Waterdeep. It's like outside of Dungeons and Dragons, but it's that old school swords and sorcery, big fantasy city.
Yeah, it's your fantasy New York with all the little streets and alleyways and groups of people.
And it smells like trash. You will probably hear me compare this to Waterdeep quite a bit, maybe a little bit of like maybe Game of Thrones, but I think it's just Waterdeep is such a popular, large fantasy city. This is a large, popular fantasy city, so you're going to see comparisons between the two a lot. Steven, what do you think of the art in this book?
Pretty solid, much like the base DCC core rulebook. The art in here, there's a little more texture. There's a little more vibe of street map. Hey, can you draw me up a quick little map of the city? Boom. This is kind of the vibe you got. It is very thuggish, if that is any sort of description that helps capture kind of the idea of the art from Lankhmar.
Yeah, I love the front cover, these thieves running on top of rooftops. There's like an archer, I guess, aiming at them. And one thing that is great about this adventure art compared to the base DCC book, it's pretty consistent. Where in DCC, we noticed they had like 12 different artists. There's like only 3 or 4 in here. And they keep the art and vibe consistent throughout the module. Overall, what do we think of the layout? So I have this in physical form and I have this in PDF as well. I got some opinions, but I want to hear yours first, Stephen.
It has a lot going on, although there is very solid, like a layout of the timeline of encounters / events. That's a really kind of solid way to show, as long as you're on this path, you're good. On each page, there is a lot going on.
Yeah, if you are a judge, you are going to be referencing multiple sections throughout this book. I really wish that on page 27, this is what you referenced, Stephen, there is a timeline of what happens in the 8 days that the player characters are in Lankhmar, what happens during those days. I just wish they did like page shortcuts. So for instance, if you want to look at, all right, here's what happens on day 1 during the night, go to page 29, for day 3, the Rat Gods collection plate, event A6, go to page 34. I feel like that would have made things a little bit easier to navigate. And there's also, you're really going to be flipping through this book a lot. This is part of the Tome of Adventure Volume 3, which is all Lankhmar modules, which is really cool. To make my life easier, I just created a PDF of just the Gang Lords section so I wouldn't get accidentally lost in other Lankhmar modules in that book.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Let's talk about the player's experience. So overall, before we get into the spoiler zone, I read the vibe, or like the intro vibe from the module, but I think the best way to summarize this is this is a level 1 adventure. So make that very clear. Level 1 in DCC, you don't really amount to nothing at level 1. You are the bottom of the barrel. Money is hard to come by. And I feel like this module does a great job of reinforcing how crucial money is to getting things and how hard it is to get money in general.
Yeah. If the funnel is to show you how crucial your life is and what you're willing to do to survive, this module, it's about getting money. It's how you become that rich adventurer by level 10 and the humble beginnings of your adventure.
And to give this more context, so we ran this for about 4 sessions. So we did Creep, Skrag, Creep. We did that on 1 session. Then we got to this for about 4 sessions. Our adventurers, essentially, they went on a ship. They're supposed to go somewhere else. They ended up not going to that place. Bad things happen on the ship. You crash into Lankhmar. You have nothing to your name. And now you're trying to get money to buy passage to go back to your homeland.
Usually by way of running into different gang of Lankhmar.
Yes. So if you are going to potentially run this, the vibe that you're looking at, like I said, this is big fantasy city. It's hard. You're in the slums. You're going to have to really, as a player, get creative and fight your way through to get the currencies. And then if you're a player who's interested in this, if you're looking for almost like turning the funnel into like a character like maze, there's like a lot of different areas that you can go into this. There are a lot of like traps, interactions. I will say there is tons of stuff for you to work with. And this module, which is something I prefer, I'd rather have more stuff than less stuff, because then I can cut out what I don't like and insert, so on and so forth. So you are given a pretty hefty tool set when you run this module as a judge.
Was it possible to go about this module without like joining one of the gangs?
The way that I read it, no.
Interesting.
I mean, you could, and you still have events of like what occurs. So I could see if you didn't want to join any of the gangs. I think before we get into any further, I'm going to put the, hey, we're entering the spoiler zone warning here. Let's talk about more in-depth things of what's actually occurring. So entering the spoiler zone right now. So in Gang Lords of Lankhmar, there are 3 gangs that are vying for domination of like the slums area. You have the Knife Twisters, the Imp Street Scuttlers, and the Outlets. The book tells you, like, gently nudges you to get you guys to work for the Knife Twisters. With our group, you decided to go with the Imp Street Scuttlers, which I think what is really funny is in the book, it says that the other group is called the Pimp Street Scuttlers. I just didn't really feel fantasy to me, so I changed it to Imp Street. So I want to apologize for any Pimp Street Scuttler fans here who are like angry, and every time that I'm calling them the Imp, IMP Street Scuttlers.
You just go with Scullers.
Could have went with the Scullers too, but I thought Imp was cool. That's kind of like the fantasy vibe.
Yeah, definitely.
In the book, they're like, hey, the Imp Street Scuttlers will offer an opportunity for the player characters to join. You guys did. So this is a very long-winded way to say, yeah, I think you could run this without you having join a gang, but you're gonna like essentially start your own gang in the process if you don't join the other ones.
Any gang activity is a little unavoidable, it seems like, which it would have been interesting to see a version or have a path where we don't, or even a path of if you want to start your own gang, instead of just saying, well, if you want to start your own game, you're gonna die.
I agree. I think when you're writing, this comes back to like my inexperience of module design. Maybe that was something that they considered, but then I think that adds even more ambiguity and additional paths that you can run through. So with this, I think they're really emphasizing like you're gonna be in a gang regardless. Like you need a gang. There's strength in numbers in Lankhmar.
Yeah.
So you crashed into Lankhmar. You all went about trying to figure out like I had y'all like roll for like charity to see if anyone would grant y'all some kindness. What do you remember about the first couple of sessions in Lankhmar, Stephen?
It was a lot of kind of figuring out how we are reacting to the events of Skrag Creep, and trying to figure out a way to make our small fortune in Lankhmar. I remember, my brother made like a sign out of charcoal to ask for money, and my character went to the post office to try and write home. It was very trying to scrape the bottom of the barrel before we got our first offer to join one of the gangs.
And that offer came from, I call him Hersey, but in the book, his name is like
Hurston or something.
If someone can just put in a pronunciation example in the comments so we know how to properly describe or name this character in the future, I think that would help us out a lot. But her sets
Hriseit.
In the Spellburn podcast, they do the Gang Lords of Lankhmar. I do remember them kind of changing how they pronounce the name every time, which I don't blame them.
Yeah.
But essentially, this 16-year-old kid offers you work for the Knife Twisters, and most of the time, I believe people would just say, yeah, we need it because you're level 1, you don't have a lot of riches to your name. And I think when you met the Knife Twisters, so this is led by King Corvold, he's like this poser king who has this like mega Timu courtroom set up, or King's Throne. When I showed you all the image of King Corvold, I just remember everyone having a good time.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at the image itself if you got it on page 25. That king's naked, man. He uses this big old Jabba the Hutt style dude surrounded by this gang of different killers. The little jester at his arm hanging on it. It's just this dude is, gosh, just the humanoid Jabba the Hutt.
So there is this like fur coat in front of his crotch. So like I feel like he's not naked. Maybe it's just a loincloth that's underneath the gut covering up the king's jewels. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah. But if you look at the chair too, there's like a cushion on it. So I don't know. Like you see on the back of the chair, like the whole fur thing kind of looks like it's just draped on the chair.
Oh no.
Yeah. And then he also has like a ponytail too that I just realized. Like what is going on with this guy?
The more you look at the image, the more it's just like revealed.
The worse it gets. Truly, a testament to the art in this one.
You're introduced to King Corvold. He offers you some money. And let's talk about the currency in Lankhmar. We had a good old time. So there's copper, bronze, silver, and gold, right? But they have like different names.
The DCC currency, copper, silver, gold, platinum. The Lankhmar currency, iron tick, bronze aggle, copper pennies, silver schmearduck, gold rilk, and diamond in amber glulditches.
Let me get a couple glulditches for the road.
Let me get some of them glulditches.
I didn't use the iron tick. I didn't use the amber glulditches because that's so many different coins to keep track of.
In D&D, there's the Electrum piece. No one talks about. No one speaks of the Electrum pieces. But, you got your copper, your silver. Electrum falls right in between, I believe, silver and gold. So it's just, some of these little extra pieces, they give you a conversion chart, but oh my gosh.
And I will say, throughout at least 3 of the 4 sessions, we talked about the currency transfer or conversion at least 3 times a session.
Yeah, we're like, we just got 50 aggles. Well, how much silver is that? How much smear ducks are that? But between the names and the conversion, gosh, it'll really test you.
I did have fun with it. I will say, like, just by adding in the fourth kind, so like we did the bronze like Aggles, it was always funny to be like, oh, I'll pay you well, and you guys would get excited, and I'd be like, yeah, like 20 Aggles, and I was like, this is nothing, dude.
This is less than pennies, because there is a copper. There's literally copper pennies is one of the things. It's difficult to get by in Lankhmar.
So I will say, from a design perspective, I prefer a good, better, best. So like, was it a bronze? I'm so sorry, a copper, a silver, and a gold. I think that's good. But to me, since I don't normally do this often, having that fourth option did bring like some humor and some enjoyment, and I was entertained by it.
And maybe that was the function. Maybe the reason for having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different types of money was a part of like how ridiculous it is to get by.
It served its purpose. Yeah. It was brought up a lot. So you met King Corvold. He gives you an offer. You say yes. Then you were made an offer by the M Street Scuttlers, and y'all decided, all right, we're going to work with the M Street Scuttlers. Why? Because they offered you more money.
Yeah.
So out of the 4 sessions that we ran, Steven, any big highlights that you remember from it?
Yeah, there was the pit fights on our first actual day with the Scuttlers was pretty cool, because the knife twisters came in and they were trying to ruffle some feathers, but we were like, hey, we're with the Scuttlers now. Back off. And it was a real good chance to, I think it was the first time my character cast a spell, so it was a really interesting way to, oh, now we're level 1 and we have all these abilities, let's use them. The jobs that we had to do were just going around to collect protection money from different establishments. That was kind of interesting, because then we had to deal with, how do we get these people to convert from the knife twisters to the Scuttlers, and just the whole buildup of how we're going to overthrow the knife twisters and leave our mark in the Scuttlers was a uphill battle, but a crazy journey nonetheless.
I felt like, and feel free to say differently, the module does a good job of like really putting you in the immersion, like you are in the city. It's hard to get by. There's like lots of different locations for you to go to. There's tension between the guilds. Everything's super cutthroat. Would you agree with that? Did you feel immersed in the city of Lankhmar, or no?
Yeah, it was pretty grueling to scrape any amount of money, and then also to not run into someone who wants money for something, be it favors or whatnot. But then also kind of towing the line of like, all right, which gang runs this area? Whose turf are we walking in on? What are we to expect? I think the module does a pretty solid job of covering those bases.
Good. And overall, I enjoyed running Gang Lords of Lankhmar. A highlight that I have, and I mentioned this a little bit in our DCC review, I feel like your brother Nick really enjoyed at least the last 3 sessions of like Lankhmar. He really bought into his character. So his character was this vagrant from like another city. So he already had like no coins to his name, and just getting paid routinely, you kind of saw him being drawn to the power of greed and the evolution of his character. So I feel like the module does a good job of, we just talked about, re-emphasizing the power of money and how it influences your character's mindsets.
Yeah, you'll definitely figure out a lot of what your character will do for a couple Aggles.
What's a couple Aggles, for a fist fight?
Oh, I gotta stab that guy? Well, let me get 5 Aggles.
Throw me some smear ducks or something.
Yeah, some amber encrusted diamonds.
So from a judge perspective, like I said earlier, you're given a lot to work with here. The main thing is just to progress the time. So run along that timeline that they give to you on page 27 at the beginning. Really emphasize the power of the gangs, the struggle between all 3 of them. Like I said, I had issues with figuring out like what locations the events are. And then there's also this cool tension tracker that they have. So there's like this little mini game that you'll have in the beginning where if a character does something, does an event, that will progress the tension tracker. So it starts off at level 3, and I'm just going to read some of the tension levels here. Tension tracker can be found on page 37. The scuttlers and owlets seethe with suspicion, watching the knives from across the street down the bar. So out of the gate, the scuttlers and owlets have an issue with the knives. If you want to progress the tension tracker, here's some examples of things that cause that. If a rival gang member is assaulted or robbed, you're going to add a +2 to the result, to the modifier on that table. If you kill a scuttler or an owlet, you'll add 3 and it progresses. So let's say you get to 22, score 22. The scuttlers send slayers to deal with the PCs. The slayers strike at night when the PCs are outside their lair. So a quick tip for anyone here, if, like my party, decides to work with the Imp Street scuttlers, just change scuttlers to knife twisters or owlets, and you're able to continue to progress along. What it's really trying to do with the neighborhood tension tracker is emphasize this boiling point. This volcano is going to erupt at some point. Did you feel, and it's okay if you didn't, did you feel like things were getting more tense session by session?
Not so much session to session. The boiling point came really quickly. I feel like we could have used a more gradual lead up to the boiling point.
Mm-hmm.
But there were signs now that I think about it. The random owlet that came in the market, and as we progressed with our successful racket money collection jobs, there was more danger out and about for us to be just out in the open. So that, looking back, that was a noticeable thing. We were only in Lankhmar for 5 days, and it got to the point where my brother was running the guild. The jump was crazy, probably due to our decisions.
Gotcha. Some advice I wish someone would give me, or if that I can give to a future judge, maybe try to emphasize the current state of tension a little bit more. I think you got to be careful because, like you said, it is really easy to let things go off the rails or ramp up and the volcano explodes super quick. But that will vary depending on your PCs and what intrigues them. Money was a huge thing for y'all. I was very pleased to see how money was on top of mind because you guys wanted to leave, so you did things more quickly. So yeah, maybe just find ways to emphasize that tension a little bit more. I really appreciate that the home bases for all of the gangs are mini dungeons. So if you want to do a mini dungeon crawl, there's a home base for the knife twisters, there's a home base for the owlets, and there's a home base for the M Street scuttlers. And there's a really solid city map of the section that you're in. So that's on pages 40 and 41 to give you an idea. I decided not to give you all the map because I felt like it would make things go quicker, but maybe in the future, maybe I could give you the map and I just erase the names of the places.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this would have helped because you gave us the map of Lankhmar and I didn't even look at it. I was like, oh, okay, we're in that section. It's huge. Got it. I didn't realize there was this detail of the area we're in. Yeah, maybe it would have been very helpful if they provided a player version of these maps.
Yes.
Something
that as I continue to run more and more modules, I love handouts. If there's something that I can give to y'all, like a player map versus a game master's map, I think that's huge because what player map does, it shows you all the little different things that you can interact with, all the little toys or the shiny things that you can go, and I'm already prepared. But then if I don't give you that map, I have to kind of steer you and give you more descriptions of the town itself. So yeah, I agree. I think a player handout map would have been huge.
And that's something I've noticed with these DCC modules or adventures, they don't really offer player handouts or player visuals that won't spoil things. And I think, once again, it is a probable callback to how it used to be, where it was just straight up no handouts and you had no minis, and it was just, here's the description, theater their mind, very, very leaning into that whole aspect, which is great. But I feel like having a player map or a player handouts enhance the gameplay.
If you are someone who has played a DCC module that has player handouts, please let us know in the comments so we can give it a try and see how it affects. I think that'd be super helpful and super entertaining. So we talked about the tension. We talked about the different gangs. I'm trying to think, is there anything else from like my experience? I think that's it. I mean, overall, this is a good job of establishing a setting, establishing a vibe of that setting. You have plenty of events and interactions to throw your players into. The world has its own flavor, its own like rules and guidelines. Everything seems pretty straightforward. Yeah, I think before I give like my overall opinion, anything else you want to talk about when it comes to Gang Lords of Lankhmar, Stephen?
I think it was a really interesting way of showing even this section of the city is just a drop in the bucket of the totality of Lankhmar, because at the end of the day, it was really just the Thieves Guild that was like above us, let alone the richer districts of Lankhmar, where there's a presumed king. The area that we were in is a nice little microcosm of the entirety of Lankhmar, I think.
Yeah. And I think if we continued playing in Lankhmar, like the Tome of Adventure Volume 3, it's all Lankhmar modules. I'm sure and I hope that it expands upon those other areas in Lankhmar. Someone on Reddit, that map I gave to y'all, created like a Foundry map that highlights each district and how large it is. And Gang Lords, yeah, it's just a slice. So there is a lot more to interact with when it comes to the setting. The Thieves Guild and the Constables. So essentially, the Knife Twisters, the Imp Street Scuttlers, the Owlets are kind of the smaller brothers, the younger brothers and sisters of the Thieves Guild of Lankhmar, which is like the head honchos. Like they're the real crime syndicate. They're in the shadows. They're governing all the things that happen in Lankhmar. And there's also an opportunity for interaction between the constable of the city, who has a relationship with the leader of the Owlets. But unfortunately, in our run of Gang Lords of Lankhmar, the leader of the Owlets is murdered. It comes back to like the Maze point. There are different pathways that you can go on in this adventure, and that might highlight more different aspects of Lankhmar.
It felt like there was a lot that we didn't even interact with almost. So if there are some cool things as a judge that you might see, feel free to steer them.
Overall, I think Lankhmar is good, almost like solid. I don't personally think it's great. It's not doing anything that really changes the game. If you are a first-time judge, oh boy, I don't know if I would recommend this because there's so many different pathways that you can go to. But if you have 5 or 6 sessions under your belt, I feel like you can run this. I don't think this is super first-time judge friendly, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think much like the Waterdeep for D&D, running big cities as your first or beginnings of your adventure is kind of rough, because there's a lot that you have to keep track of in terms of factions, different people, all these NPC names. So it could be just a hang up with big city settings, where it simultaneously is a rich tapestry of different people and different things going on and different pathways to go down, and options are nice. It could develop a kind of analysis paralysis, or like kind of hard to keep track of who's who and where's where and what's what. So that could be an issue just with big city settings in general.
Yeah. And I went to the DCC Discord and I was like, hey, is there any tips with this? And one of the main tips that I remember, they were just like, take your time, guide them, steer them, because there are so many different pathways that you can go to, and don't get lost in trying to describe like every piece of city block or each individual building. What's great about y'all is like you would ask for a specific thing. Like Michael's like, hey, is there a butcher shop? Yes, absolutely. I can get you to a butcher shop. But I didn't have to tell you like, oh, yeah, the butcher shop's next to a post office, which is next to, a weapons shop, so on and so forth. So it can, like you said earlier, it's very easy to get lost in the sauce when running a city adventure. Like I said, I think this just isn't first time Judgy's book.
The best thing you can do with this is follow what your players want to do, notice what they take interest in, and then focus on that. Don't get carried away with scribing everything, rolling for every little thing, because it does offer a lot of tables in terms, like there's a whole table for witness. Roll up who the witness is for the thing you did, which is really cool. But in terms of like describing every nitty gritty thing, notice the interest of your players and then look into that and worry about that.
Agreed. And I'm glad you said that, because that just reminded me, this book does a really good job of making the M Street Scuttlers, the Knife Twisters, and the Owlets like distinct. They are distinct. They all have like a head honcho, a lieutenant. So y'all worked with the M Street Scuttlers. Ipkish is like their deputy. You interacted with Ipkish a lot. And a little bit with Boss Letho, but then Boss Letho unfortunately was murdered by one of your teammates. But they do a good job of fleshing out the gangs, who's a part of them. So I do want to say like that is good. I feel so funny because like normally I'm like, this is amazing. Like, this is the best thing. Like, I just think this is good. Like, this is like C+, B-. You will not waste your money. Like, if you buy this and run this, I still had a really, really good time. I just think it's solid overall. Do I recommend bringing this to the table? Yes, asterisk, if you have some DCC sessions under your belt or TTRPG GM experience under your belt.
Yeah, I agree with that kind of rating. If you are into this, facilitates the need for that city setting. If you're used to that, with your Waterdeep, this does a really good job of continuing that sort of trend. Lots of places, lots of faces, tons of names.
Well, I think that'll do it for us here at We Took the Quest. Thank you for joining us here on the Sidequest. Steven, any other thoughts on Gangs of Lankhmar before we get out of here?
If you are lucky enough to be blessed by the King's light, that's awesome.
Peace be with you. We'll see you next time when We Took the Quest. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Deuces.